So here we are today in the Monsanto National Forest, or at least the Monsanto Wilderness portion, right near the Grand Enchantment Trail. And it's been beautiful, if slightly harrowing trip. Very steep, pretty much everywhere out here. You've got trails and roads that love to wander along cliff sides, and some of it is not especially well maintained, as one might expect coming up an old road, or heading along the trail, as we can see here, in an area that really is not meant to be particularly frequented and is in fact being continued as wilderness to be left mostly in a natural state. So it's always a little more exciting that way. So recently, people have been asking a little bit more about some of the astrobiology stuff. And it's been an interesting question that's come a few times. When we recently had a discussion with some astrobiologists, it was interesting to note that the thing that kept coming up every time we'd have a discussion about how we would look for life, what the best approaches might be, how often or where to send something. All of these were important topics, but they all seemed to always come back to one question that never quite got answered. What actually are we looking for in the first place? What is life, and what might life look like elsewhere in the universe, even close to Earth? There are certainly some things that seem to, suggest almost unequivocally. I'm sure there are always some people who would disagree, but if we found something out there that was actually gorging itself on something energy source and then belching out completed DNA strands that would reproduce completely, and we had something that looked very much like an existing cell, we would probably be able to agree that we had found life, although there would also be the continued question about whether or not that would be something that would be even alien life, because of course there have been plenty of questions about how you avoid detecting contamination. One of the papers that was referenced suggested looking for chirality, or different chirality, since we have the right-handed chirality in pretty much everything on Earth, and that functional compatibility. Then we would have the left-handed chirality, perhaps in an alien life, if it had arisen independently. And that might be enough to confirm beyond question that we had indeed found something truly alien. But it's an assumption into itself to assume that it even works in quite the same way, or that we'd be looking for something that we would completely recognize as such. So that debate continues along, and you have to wonder, is it anything that basically makes use of an energy gradient? How much does it have to be directed? How much should we focus on things that we know to exist? For instance, water is always popular. We're always trying to see what we can see, looking in puddles on Mars, or trying to find anything on the moons of Jupiter or Saturn that might have some liquid that we could poke our noses in to try to extract something living. But it may be that some of the assumptions that we're making about what life needs, or at least what we find on Earth life, are not the perfect assumptions either. Maybe just energy is the proper thing to go after. So maybe the hydrocarbons elsewhere in the solar system are a better choice. It's difficult to make any kind of determination about this stuff. So you end up with those arguments and find it really hard to actually make a lot of you know, clear, defined choices about whether or not you found anything. Fortunately, that tends not to affect things too much. I mean, at a certain point, you're just like, oh, well, we just got to go out there and look and see what we can find. So, send a probe. Send many probes. Send some people. Although there's always, a bunch of concerns about any manned missions, because, of course, then you have a much greater risk of contamination and putting anything in. The human cannot be sent out without taking along not just identifiably human materials, but the whole host of microorganisms that inhabit the body, that live on top of the skin and everything else, which of course gets shed and spread all over the place. It's pretty messy in that regard, though we don't think about it too much. So we have at least, generally popular ideas to send out various machines to see what we can find and start digging. And whatever we do find, we have to examine and sift through and see what we can discover. I mean, we may not find life, but we find some interesting geology, some fascinating chemistry. If nothing else, we'll learn something else about our solar system. And so it's kind of a shame we're not putting more effort into getting a little further out there, a little more engaged than we have been in the past on some of this stuff, that we have not been pushing as far forward as we could be. And yeah, for my part, I would argue that applies to manned missions as well. Yes, there's definitely some risk of contamination in some places, but we aren't even going back to the moon on a regular basis. And there's a difficult trade-off that has to be made in terms of how hard we're going to pull back the reins and say, no, we're not going to go out there because there's too much risk. We might harm what's already there, versus taking the next step and really pushing outward with human exploration for all of the advantages that come with that. So, do we look at every nook and cranny? Do we decide that we've had enough after 100 unmanned missions? What is going to be the line on that? At some point, people are going to go. It's just human nature. You're not going to convince everybody to hang back, and if contamination is the primary concern, is only going to take one person, one country, one company going out there and doing it, staking a flag, putting feet on the ground, whatever that may be. And you're going to find that whatever hope you had of preventing any kind of contamination or spread of human life, or human life as well, but life from Earth is kind of over. And so you have that problem that you have to worry about, where just somebody, even if it's against the law or some kind of international law, might go ahead and do it anyway. So that's another reason to hurry up with the unmanned missions too. We want to get those in quickly so that we can not have so much of this problem. If we get a few more of those done in short order, then we increase the amount of area that we've covered, that we can say that we've at least had a look before there was any kind of incursion, that we are expanding our reach and our knowledge in this area, that we've definitely put in the time and the effort to try and find alien life within the scope that we can reach at this point. It's not like this is would be a minor discovery or not worth the time and the effort. So we're definitely, hoping to see a lot more missions in the near future. I think that there is more interest turning in that direction. Certainly, NASA, in some of its recent efforts, is looking toward more such exploration, is putting more money toward that and putting more people into a position to go look for this stuff and to really help to move forward with future missions that would expand our knowledge and our ability to detect life or something that may or may not be considered life, depending on your perspective, in the near future. And we just, saw the Indian Space Agency manage to land on the south pole of the moon. So other agencies are probably getting out there. The private companies will probably have to be involved at some point, especially if they have a continuing interest to go to places like Mars, as we have heard from SpaceX in the past. They really want to go and start a base there. This is a discussion we're going to have because, of course, planetary protection, it does remain in effect as an issue that'll have to be considered. So they may actually want to throw a little more money into this kind of research as well, as a way to hasten the point when we may be able to come to an agreement that at least certain parts that are well explored of the planet Mars might be open to human habitation, areas that we've already checked off. Maybe not the whole planet, and there are certain limitations to that, but if we, can keep it in certain zones, then perhaps we can limit any kind of problematic infestation of life from Earth that might cause harm to or make indistinguishable any life that was there already. All right, so it's been a fun little chat. I appreciate you listening. If you have any questions or comments, please open up a dialogue. I'm definitely excited to hear more topics and things people want to hear about with these little chats. And we'll catch you next time.